Good morning and happy Labor Day to everyone. It is Chris Lee at Southeastern 16, joined by my co-host Jay Greeson. We are here to give you SEC Power Rankings post-week one. Boy, do we have some differences in opinion and how the five of us sorted it out. Was looking forward to tabulating the votes, giving them to you. You'll get those momentarily. But first of all, a reminder, we are brought to you by FanDuel, where you can get player props, futures, and more. You can get same-game parlays because FanDuel's SGP menu is deep and impressive, so you can build some fun combinations around player performances and game outcomes. FanDuel's got you covered with competitive odds and tons of betting options. Just remember to bet responsibly and have fun with it. Jay Greeson, we are not done with week one of college football, which is now stretched into 5 different nights. Doesn't even include week 0 last week. Got one more coming up, TCU in North Carolina. What do you see interesting at FanDuel on that one?
Well, it's North Carolina completely overhauls their entire program with the Belichick hiring and hiring his college cheerleader, Hottie, as the de facto social media director. But moreover, they've got 70 new players. TCU tonight is a 3.5-point road favorite with a total of 55.5. I am leaning towards the under there because, and what I like it at 56 is, which is one of those magic numbers in the 3-7-10 realm and factors thereof. But I don't know what North Carolina's offense is going to be, but I have to believe North Carolina's defense with Coach Hoodie is going to be a lot better. And Chris, I really think, even before we get into the rankings, the overwhelming shuffle of the Heisman odds after what we saw from an offseason of Arch Manning being far and away the talking point of best player since maybe Andrew Luck. 3, 4, 5. He is now the 6th SEC quarterback with plus 1,800 Heisman odds. Behind, in order,
Sellers.
Garrett Nussmeier's your favorite at plus 800. Lenora Sellers at plus 1,000. Carson Beck, who's, of course, not in the SEC, is next. Gunnar Stockton, plus 1,200. John Mateer, plus 1,600, which is the same number as Jackson Arnold.
Jackson Arnold, of course. Wow. What a
Go ahead and
crazy
tell me if
one.
you had on your bingo card Jackson Arnold needing one game to pass Arch Manning in the Heisman odds at FanDuel.
Well, it just goes to show it's hard to put much into preseason stuff anymore with all the transfer portal shuffling, coordinator shuffling, all those things. The
portal thing got me thinking, and I know we got to get to the rankings because we're going to have to move quickly because we got to get through 16 of them. But the conversation, I think, and the narrative is going to change moving forward. Because if you can find a guy who is somewhat close to elite in either offensive scheming, defensive scheming, or motivation, or even money raising, it is now wasted money to go to the alumni and say, we got to buy this guy out. Now, if you have Jeremy Pruitt and you know it's a dead-end street, or Brian Harsin, and you know this is not going to work, then you've got to clear the deck. But Kalen DeBoer's buyout is $77 million. Think how much talent you could buy Kalen DeBoer. If you still think he's good, spend half of that and go dominate the portal. I mean, the finances of this it's going to be the trickle-down theory of NIL economics. Buy out the roster and not the coaching staff.
Yeah, the common theme in sports now, the agent is always the winner.
Well, have you seen Any Given Saturday?
I've seen a lot of it.
Okay. The scene that was most striking to me was Brian Kelly talking to his agent, who also happens to be Garrett Nussmeier's agent, and negotiating what it's going to take, at least with no numbers being bandied about. Brian Kelly saying point blank to his agent, Garrett Nussmeier's agent, if he's a third-round pick, it's a wash financially. Well,
wow.
You better not hope Garrett Nussmeier has a season-ending injury for a multitude of reasons, but could that open the agent up to malpractice? Because he makes more money off of Brian Kelly's salary than he does Garrett Nussmeier's salary.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Never thought of it that way. We'll jump into power rankings momentarily, but first of all, a reminder, hold up your cup, Jay Greeson. I'll hold mine up. This is my 40-ounce water tumbler that I drink every morning. Got it filled with ice and water. I got that from GameTime SIDEKICKS, where you can get officially licensed stainless steel drinkware, all SEC schools, over 350 other universities, everything from stainless steel sippy cups, tumblers, 40-ounce bottles, and shaker cups. Use SE16 for the 20% discount on your entire order. Their stuff is beautiful, and trust me, you will love it. All right, let's hop right into the rankings. We start from the bottom. The Kentucky Wildcats, who did beat Toledo this weekend, thanks to a late 79-yard touchdown run from Dante Dowdell, the transfer from Nebraska. But, man, Jay, the numbers offensively just were not pretty for Kentucky again, which is kind of what we feared. 4.6 yards of play, 3.7 yards of passing play. But the defense stepped up and won the game for the Cats. So there's that. There was a little bit of identity back in Kentucky in terms of playing tough defense and those sorts of things. But unfortunately, the other part of that was they couldn't throw the ball.
Well, I've got them a spot or two higher, and I'm certain we're going to discuss
by 5 spots higher, I believe.
Well,
anyway.
I'll say this. All right. We had conversations over the weekend on how everybody does their own power rankings, and I think the diversity of it is a good thing. Some people say who's going to be favored over whom in a neutral site. And in that regard, Kentucky being 16 makes a lot of sense. But in that regard, ESPN's FPI does it that way. Who is the computer index more powerful team? Did you see this week's ESPN FPI? Texas is still number one. So that is a flawed theory in my – if that's the only theory you use, that's flawed in my mind.
Yeah. Well, I look at it as –
was better than Vandy's opponent, was better than Mississippi State's opponent, was better than probably Missouri's opponent. Not saying I have Missouri lower than that, but look, they got down to a one-score favorite at home, and that's a telling part of the perception of Kentucky. And look, man, Zach Calzada is exactly who we thought he was in all of his previous stops across the SEC. So this team is going to struggle to score points, and they better buckle up, because after they cost Ole Miss a spot in the playoff last year, Lane Kiffin's coming in with his foot on the clutch and his hand on the gear shifter.
Yeah, no doubt about that. What I do, I look for, okay, what do I think I know about a team? If I think like a team is returning most of its defense or something like that, and I have a little bit of an off night, but I think they're good, I will defer to what I think I know. I did not shift my teams probably as much in the rankings as the other ones, the other four in this one. And then I adjust for what I see, especially where I don't know. So anyway, that's how I do it. That's a lot of words. My apologies. All right, let's move on to 15. Mississippi State, which won at Southern Miss, despite having 116 yards of penalties. But I think for State, the defense was a lot better in this game. We'll see what that means. It was Southern Miss. But you got to be happy if you were Jeff Levy and the Bulldogs coming out of week one.
Again, another opponent that now this, even some of the teams I'm harsh on, some of these performances I think are going to age better in the weeks of perspective. Toledo being among them. I think Southern Miss, Charles Huff knows what he's doing. And if you did not see his post-game news conference, he got up there and said, look, we're going to be a better football team than we were a year ago. I know that in my soul. But they spent millions, if not tens of millions, rebuilding their offensive and defensive line. We can't do that here. So that's not us. But they were competitive. I mean, and the environment was great.
Yeah. I mean, I thought that was a tough spot. Tough spot to go into. You're playing Southern Miss. It's probably going to be hot and humid. Southern Miss doesn't get many games like that.
Absolutely.
You know, the core of the team that won the Sun Belt. I thought it was a good performance for State in week 1. And happy for those guys that they pulled it off. All right, number 14, Arkansas, which was exactly what we thought it was. It rolled up, 552 yards of total offense and a 52-7 win over Alabama State. I don't know that we really learned anything about Arkansas in week 1.
Except Taylor Green hitting on one of my fearless predictions against an inferior opponent. But man, oh man, year 2, Taylor Green and Bobby Petrino with an experience and all that extra time with him, you better buckle up your offense and have a couple of wrinkles in because Arkansas is going to score points this year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. No doubt about that. All right, let's get into our number 13 team, which is Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt also kind of did exactly what I thought it would do, tear up one of the worst opponents anybody in the SEC faced this weekend. Diego Pavia threw for, I think, 275 in about 2.5 quarters. Vanderbilt had a shutout to the last, I think, 30 seconds of the game. Yeah, Vanderbilt just kind of went out and took care of business. And I think the biggest thing for them is Eli Stowers looked good. There was some concern about him. He'd missed a lot of fall camp with, I think, a back issue. And the way he played, it didn't look like anything had happened in that regard.
Eli Stowers was great. I mean, he was excellent last year. The interaction on going back to any given Saturday, the interaction between Pavia and Stowers in that documentary from last year lets you know that they have a connection that is beyond pass thrower, pass catcher. And I think that's telling and valuable.
Yeah, again, I thought Vanderbilt did just about exactly what I expected it to do. And I think we got a tie at 11. This is only tie in the rankings. Missouri kind of did the same thing. I thought Bo Pribula was really, really good. I'm a little concerned about his offensive line. Hard to move Missouri up or down much either way, given who it played. But Missouri took care of business. And I thought you saw a little connection between Pribula and Marquise Johnson, who's an NFL draft prospect. And I thought I've been bigger on this team, I think, than anybody on the show. And there was nothing. In fact, I probably feel a little better about it in some ways, given what I saw at quarterback. Now, I'm concerned about their O-line. But I thought Missouri was pretty impressive in week 1. And, again, I think that defense, which is going to be pretty good, just absolutely had a shutdown performance, as it should have.
Well, there's a dark cloud because Sam Horn apparently is injured again and may be out an extended period. But if there's a silver lining to that dark cloud, it lets everybody know that Bo Pribula is the guy, you know? I mean, because the plan going into last Thursday night was Pribula was going to play the first half, Horn was going to play the second half. It's the reason I laid the big weight, and that bet paid off. So maybe my wallet voted Missouri higher than most of you guys, but my belief on who I voted 16th is what has put a spin on a bunch of these rankings, because I've had every team we've mentioned so far higher than they've been in this poll.
I suspect that he was the guy anyway.
He probably was. But here's the thing, though. Coach Drink gave him both the opportunity to compete with similar scripts in a game situation. Look, nobody wants anybody to get hurt, but he's now not having to pick and choose in a locker room, because nothing can divide a locker room quicker, because you get circles of people who think, well, Sam Horn throws the ball to me more. Sam Horn does this. Bo Pribula does that. He throws the ball to me more. So quarterback controversies are not only disruptive because you don't have a QB1, And the Spurrier adage of if you think you've got two, you've got none is true, but it's also locker room divisive. I mean, the biggest one ever was Jason Campbell and Daniel Craig in 2003 Auburn. That team was preseason top 5 and crapped their pants. Not Daniel Craig, Daniel Cobb.
Amen.
Daniel Craig was James Bond for a while.
Right, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I was going, no, not Daniel Craig.
Auburn would have James Bond on the roster. He could have been.
Sam's got a good point. Losing Blake Craig is the bigger loss. Hey, injuries, look, we hadn't got to the one that has got everybody pulling their hair out in a certain place where houndstooth is the required clothing for church and for working in the farm. But nobody wants to come out of this with significant injuries, and that's a fair point, Sam. Very fair.
Yeah, most teams don't have two really good kickers. Missouri had one. I think he hit from 49 and 55 from memory. And then, hey, if he's only out 8 weeks, that's better than I would have thought because I believe it's an ACL injury. Sam can let us know. But that's a tough injury for anybody, but particularly a kicker. All right, on to 11. And man, I don't know what to say. I think 11 is too low, but you didn't clearly. You had them 16.
I did have them 16.
I don't think you drop a team that you feel like can compete for a national title 15, all the way to the bottom. I mean, come on, they're not going to lose to Kentucky if they play.
But you're now talking about field. The games have to matter. And we've only got one. Everybody's only taken one test. And only one team in the SEC got an F, and it's Alabama.
Okay.
And it's a bona fide F. So, look, they lost to a team that was 2-10 last year. They were a 14-point favorite on the road, and they crapped their pants.
Yeah. Hey, look, it didn't look good. 4.7 yards per snap on offense. That's awful. Would have never expected that. I'm just not ready to throw the whole thing out on Alabama yet.
I'm not either. I mean, and I truly believe this loss will age well because I've spent a whole weekend talking to a whole lot of folks who were saying, well, what's your biggest takeaway? My biggest takeaway was not that Ty Simpson was beyond mediocre. Arch Manning's getting a whole lot of grief. Ty Simpson wasn't good either. My biggest takeaway is not that a defense that we thought was going to be flex your muscle dominant was also mediocre. My takeaway is not an offensive line that we thought was the best in the country was middle tier in the league in week 1. My biggest takeaway, and this is the reason this loss is going to age better than most people think this morning, Malzahn and Tommy Castellanos looked like Malzahn and Nick Marshall in 2013.
Yeah.
And in 2013. And that team got to the title game. And, of course, also lost to Florida State. And the thought process of Malzahn just calling plays with a quarterback that quick who is that fearless, the ACC better buckle up because Georgia Tech ain't no joke. Miami had a huge win, and FSU is going to be a hell of a lot better than anybody thought. But still, boys, I voted Alabama 16, period. It's the worst performance of the weekend. And I challenge you to name another coach you saw this weekend where you now know their buyout. We know Stoops' buyout because we talked about it all summer. We may know Freeze's buyout because we talked. That's another great question. Who thought we'd wake up this morning and Hugh Freeze's seat would be cooler than Kalen DeBoer?
Yeah. I mean, it was a wild weekend. I think, look, I can't argue anything you said, but I also look at that roster, and they've got a ton of talent. Maybe you get a change of quarterback. I don't know. I think the biggest issue to me was they had a hard time protecting. They had discipline issues, and they got run on by Florida State. Now, look, I think you could end up the year and say Florida State was really good. Thomas Castellanos was exactly what Florida State needed, along with Gus Malzahn, and it might not be a bad loss. Like for Alabama, it's a bad loss. But for anybody else, it may not. I mean, we may look up at the end of the year, Florida State was 10-2, and everybody overreacted. Now, I think Alabama played poorly. I'm just saying, I think this may end up being one of the better teams an SEC team played in week 1. It was on the road, and also was played in a bit of a weather mess too.
Well, how about this in terms of, and some folks are agreeing with me in the comments, and some people are saying Alabama's too low there. Well, Alabama's as low as 11 in our rankings because I had them 16.
Yeah.
But the betting market has also overreacted. FanDuel went from Alabama being a minus 188 favorite to make the playoff, which means if you had to bet $188 to win 100. Now they are plus 176 to make the playoff.
Yeah.
So that's a complete, almost a 50% flip over. And those are from the people who run the analytics.
Yeah. I'm trying to see what their next big game, because they've got Louisiana Monroe this weekend, which is probably exactly what they need. They've got Wisconsin coming up in 2 weeks. That may tell us a little bit. Then a bye. Then they've got Georgia, which they have owned Georgia. So,
and
I think
you mentioned a couple things because I think the discipline's a big one. And because, all right, we thought Saban would get feisty at times on the sideline. We know he would get feisty in the press conferences and talk directly to his fan bases and his team through the media, and would chew out media guys. I've been in a number of them, and it got uncomfortable. But the true conversation, and another step beyond discipline, is they got out physicaled.
yes.
I mean, and here's the other part of this, and Get Musty put this in the chat. A transfer quarterback from BC talked unknown amounts of trash to Alabama's roster and their coaching staff. And he backed it up. If somebody had said that going into the season opener with a Saban team, that game would have been 52-7.
Yeah. I mean, you saw it with the Vanderbilt game, in 17, when Vanderbilt had a defensive lineman that opened his mouth, and Saban used that for motivation all week. Castellanos, they had all summer to stew on that. And now that's the second time in the last, 11 months they've gotten beat by a quarterback who's probably 5'9". So, yeah. All right, we're going to move on past Alabama. I'm very interested to see where this one's going to go from here. We'll take a quick break to remind you to support a couple other sponsors who support our show. That is ROKFORM. ROKFORM makes the world's strongest magnetic phone case. It offers extreme protection and super strong magnets, as well as ROKLOK secure mounting. At ROKFORM, quality is paramount. You can expect the same military-grade standards with all their case accessories, just as you do the actual cases. I've got a ROKFORM case. It is terrific. I encourage you to get all your phone gear and other stuff at ROKFORM.com or ROKFORM.com. They've got all kinds of stuff you need, and boy, is it well made. SEC25 for 25% off your order at ROKFORM.com. Also welcoming a new sponsor, Hovi Dry Goods, which makes your new favorite hat. Look no further than Hovi. It's HOVI, hats for high-quality headgear and a great fit. Let's see that again, Jay. That's an old school there, which they make a lot of that stuff.
It actually, and it's deeper for those of us with huge melons that you can actually wear it. I'm a visor guy because my head is enormous. I mean, they called me Kool-Aid when I was growing up because I looked like the big pitcher run through the walls. So, but it actually, and you can even flip it around and be like your favorite high school defensive coordinator and put the headset on and then bark cuss words at a whole bunch of 15-year-olds, which is everybody's favorite Friday night pastime. So, but no, my son confiscated the other one because he applied to Auburn just yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, they make some cool stuff. Just go check out their website. HOVI, again, is the name of the company. Limited edition hats in small batches. They bring a fresh look to some of our favorite teams with artwork, places, and memories. Hovi Dry Goods, also they sponsor this. The Bad Beat Team of the Week is Alabama. That's going to be a thing they're going to do this year. The team that just kind of caught a bad beat. I think you could say the weather. You called a hot quarterback. Now, I would argue there's another team higher up in the power rankings that maybe called a bad beat. But
a badder beat, and the baddest beat at least if we're talking in terms of FanDuel, and I know our hat partners are doing it out of SEC teams.
Yeah.
But if you were a Penn State bettor, you had Penn State. Let me make certain I get the numbers right. Penn State minus 42.5. They were up 46-3. And whatever trash team they were playing scored with 8 seconds left and got the 2-point conversion. So Penn State lost the cover, and they barged through the back door in a 46-11 loss. Because when I hear bad beat, I think about it with my wallet more than my heart.
Yeah. Hovi Dry Goods, that's HOVI. You can get a discount on the bad beat team of the week. So Alabama fans, I believe they're offering a discount on Alabama hats this week. Don't have the details in front of me, but I will get those. So that'll be a promotion we'll be running all year, is when your team catches a bad beat and they've got your merch, you will get the discount on that. So anyway, moving on to, where are we? Number 10, Texas A&M. And I had a hard time with this one. I think I had A&M 6 in the power ratings. I believe I moved down A&M to about where we've got them as a group, because A&M gave up 177 yards to a running back, which was an issue for the Aggies a year ago. Now, the positive is Marcel Reed was really good through the air, threw 4 touchdowns, no picks. Now, I think UTSA's defense is not very good.
Did you see the throw he missed in the highlights?
No.
Oh, my sweet Jesus. I mean, that guy was so alone. He made Tom Hanks in Castaway. I mean, at least he had Wilson. That guy was so by himself running down the sideline, and he overthrew him by 10 yards.
Oh, well, I think I'm more concerned about the defense at this point. The running game also didn't get off track in week 1 the way I thought it would. I think they'll get there. Week 1, you see a lot of weird stuff sometimes, but I would have liked to seen a more commanding performance from A&M, which I think that game was pretty close. What was it, 21-17 in the third quarter at one point? So,
but I think the Roadrunners, UT San Antonio, are probably going to be a bowl team.
Yeah, well, they always are. Moving on to 9, Oklahoma, which I think the John Mateer era started exactly the way you would have wanted it to. He was 30 of 37. I say he was. They may have got a backup in at the end. But stopped the run pretty well. Beat, again, it was a top 10 FCS team. So for whatever that's worth, it was a better FCS team than the rest of the league played. I think if you're Oklahoma, your opinion on the Sooners doesn't really change as much, other than you had a little proof of concept that maybe John Mateer is possibly all that Oklahoma hoped based on week 1.
I also think I had Oklahoma higher than this, because I also think there's a very real case that while they beat a overmatched team, but they only beat them 35-3 by comparison to some of these other blowouts, Oklahoma's got the biggest game in the country next weekend. You do not want to trot out a whole lot of the things. You knew this was going to be a cakewalk, and you're happy to take the cakewalk, keep some bullets in the gun when Michigan comes calling next week, and game day is going to be there.
Yeah. I think their defense also showed up in a big way. They gave up 3 points to a pretty good team. Again, I think all the talk on OU has been around that offense, but I think that front 7 is one of the better ones in the country, and it showed up, and it did exactly what I think we thought it would do in week 1, which was pretty much dominate. Okay, number 8. This is a hard one to know what to do with. We settled at 8 on Ole Miss between all of us. I think we were all over the board on Ole Miss. Did Ole Miss probably have the most impressive performance of anybody week 1 statistically? Yeah, it did. On the other hand, I feel like this is kind of what Lane Kiffin does. Like, I think there's 2 teams in the league that, like, it's almost a layup. Anytime they get an overmatched opponent, they are going to put up a slew of points, and that's Ole Miss and Tennessee. So I kind of feel like we've seen this with Ole Miss before. They beat the tar out of somebody, and then they get somebody closer to their own weight class and lay an egg. So I'm a little bit more reserved on Ole Miss, but hey, 63-6 over Georgia State. Also they didn't take their foot off the gas pedal. They could have easily downed the ball inside the last minute, chose to run up another score, which a lot of teams wouldn't have done. But still, very impressive performance for Austin Simmons and also the defense in week 1.
Well, a lot of teams aren't coached by this generation Spurrier, which Kiffin fashions himself as. And if you're – and I'm not saying he's as good as Spurrier, but the post-game news conference that Spurrier would give is, well, my guys practice offense. Their guys practice defense. Their job is to stop us. So, look, Austin Simmons, I thought looked as good as anybody. Say whatever you want about competition. Georgia State's not bad. Dale McGee knows what he's doing, and he gets a whole lot of – I mean, they're more talented a handful of the other dregs the 10 or so teams in the league trotted out there for a money game punch in the face in week 1. And, look, I get it. I understand doing that, and it was a perfect setting for Austin Simmons because it was a no-lose situation. He got to work through the early nerves of a starter and then switch gears, and they look great.
All right, moving on to 7, South Carolina. I had Carolina higher after watching that game just because I thought the defense was better than I thought it would be. As you pointed out, Virginia Tech did leave some stuff on the table, but quarterback play is kind of a big thing for me in this, Jay. And I think right now you can debate your best quarterback in the league. It could be Lenore Sellers. It could be Garrett Nussmeier. It might even be DJ Lagway or somebody else. Could be a number of other guys. But I think right now, the prove it with Lenore Sellers and Nussmeier, we'll get to LSU later. I think to me, when I'm kind of splitting hairs on teams, knowing you've got a dude at quarterback is a separator for me. And I think once you saw some of the other things checked with the special teams play, with the way the defense played, I did not exit week 1 any less bullish on Carolina than entered it. And again, if you aren't watching, I think the Gamecocks got a touchdown taken away from them, or it would have been more lopsided than it was.
I had them multiple spots higher than this. I think they got robbed by a touchdown from that Nick Harbor, and that could be a whole different show about the mind-blowing. He's got to take 2 steps in the end zone and then fall. Because if that'd been a running back, all you got to do is cross the plane. Love the special teams. Did not like, with the exception of Faison, a little bit what felt like it was all on Lenore Sellers to make a play. But look, he stays healthy. And I say this with the utmost that I can't give a bigger praise to a quarterback. There were times he looked like Cam Newton. And that's a scary proposition for a South Carolina team that, look, our biggest questions about South Carolina were not offensively. They were about how they're going to replace all those defensive dudes, and they kept Virginia Tech out of the end zone. So I think this is too low. And I wonder if the final had been 34-11 instead of 27-11 or somewhere in that ballpark. Where do you go? I mean,
yeah,
I don't know, but I was impressed with South Carolina because they also did it in a neutral site and in front of everybody. I don't understand how you guys rank Texas ahead of South Carolina in this. Because we haven't got to Texas yet.
And I did by once. By the way, you and I were the high voters on Carolina. So take that for what it's worth. And this is not uncommon. Opinion was all over the board on these teams after week 1. Because you could take a lot of things one way or the other from these games. So, all right, let's move on to 6, which is Texas. I think 6 is kind of low, and I would push back on this a little bit.
I think it's high.
Well, the defense played really well. Okay, I think Arch Manning's stinker kind of overshadowed everything. I still think there's a really good and talented team. I don't think there's 5 teams in the league better than Texas, but I get it. The quarterback play was terrible. It was not at all what anybody expected. Bill Connolly had a thing. Well, no, and Bill Connolly had a thing, and I disagree with this, okay, because you got to watch game flow and how it happened. Based on the box score, Texas had an 83% chance of winning the game. It was the biggest case of a team in terms of what the box score says should have won the game but didn't. That's a horrible way to explain it there that he had. Now, I don't think – I didn't watch the game and say Texas should have won it because, again, Arkansas got a lot of those yards in the last 5 minutes. But for whatever it's worth, that's Bill Connolly weighing in on it. I still think Texas showed a lot of good things in this game defensively. But, Arch Manning, when you hype him up all off season, as everybody did, and it goes poorly, that is going to be what everybody's talking about after the game, and that's where we are.
I had Texas lower than this, but I did not have them anywhere near Alabama because some of your points are completely valid. They outgained Ohio State by 100 yards. They were driving to tie the game, and they are clearly number one if they convert. Certainly, if they convert 2 of those 4th down tries in Ohio State territory, but they didn't. And so should Ohio State, when the AP poll is released later this week, be number one? Probably.
Yeah.
If not Ohio State, it needs to be LSU. And then, look, this another loss that's going to age like Raquel Welch. It's going to age very well. And Texas is going to be fine. I'm going to check their FanDuel playoff odds because I'm still betting it's at minus money for Texas to make the playoff because the schedule is amazingly doable. Texas is still at minus 184 to make the playoff. So it kind of gives back to a conversation you and I had this summer about, is this a bingo card loss? I mean, they're still almost 2-1 to make the playoff, meaning you got to bet $200 to win 100. I guess that's 1-2.
Yeah. I think the thing is here, like the difference between Alabama and Texas, Alabama had major concerns on both sides of the ball, plus discipline issues with the penalties. Texas looked really good on defense. It's just the offense, again, was so bad, and because who the quarterback was, that's all people are talking about. Look, they allowed 203 yards of total offense to Ohio State, which was breaking in a new quarterback, but a seriously talented new quarterback. I mean, who would have thought that Jeremiah Smith was a complete non-factor in that game? And we're talking about Texas losing. So
that's an interesting point right there that Rostaman brings up, because there were a lot of folks who were low on yours and who were screaming for Arch to be part of this. And there were a lot of people who questioned it in the offseason of, hey, let's pump the brakes a little bit on the Arch bus, because if he was this good a year ago, they still played Quinn Ewers. And Rostaman put a very fair point that said if they'd had Quinn Ewers last year, they win that football game. And it's hard to disagree with him because the defense was elite. See, if you're a Texas fan, you took a 7-point road loss from the defending national champion, and you're still a 1-2 pick, theoretically, at FanDuel to make the playoff. So this is – maybe it's an immediate overreaction because you're only one of 2 SEC teams that lost, but there's not a whole lot of concern among Longhorn Nation. Alabama better be trying to figure out what the hell went wrong, because that was a 2-10 team with a whole bunch of new pieces, and they punched you in the face.
Yeah, completely agree on that. All right, number 5, Florida. Again, a lot of opinion on this one. I had Florida at 3, and that was not because it beat Long Island 55-0. It was mostly based on my opinion of Florida coming into the season, and you wanted to see a healthy DJ Lagway, which it appears you got. Look, Long Island is probably the worst team an SEC team played in week 1, but man, to hold anybody to 2 first downs is pretty impressive, Jay, which is what the Gators did.
I had them much lower than this because, look, in what I wrote in the Times Free Press this morning as I ranked the SEC teams, they crushed Long Island. Chattanooga's got multiple private schools who would have beaten Long Island because Baylor School here in Chattanooga's got 8 or 9 Power 4 commitments on their roster, including the number 1 running back in America for the class of 2027. So, look, DJ Lagway was off the charts with a rating because he was 15 of 18. They allowed a minuscule number of first downs, but no, that's Long Island. And that this is too high in my mind for Florida. Do I think Florida's good? Absolutely. But this is too high. After
Florida's 14 would have put up more resistance. I didn't rank Florida
more impressive to me than South Carolina's.
Well, no, but that's not what we're going on. I'm going on what do I think a team is and what moved me off my opinion in week 1. I thought Florida was a potential playoff contender, given the roster, given if DJ Lagway is healthy, and I didn't see anything that would move my opinion off Florida in week 1. That's how I do it. I think you just kind of ranked yours on who did you beat and how did it look in week 1. I don't throw everything out that I thought coming into the season. The closest I came to that was Alabama, because I'm like, what the heck is this? That looked nothing like I thought it would look. And maybe I was wrong, but I think Florida, to me, I just think they've got so many pieces here. And I think if Lagway's healthy, I mean, you saw the second half. I mean, you want to see a team in that spot. I want to look for things like, okay, don't give up a bunch of yards and don't get a bunch of penalties. I don't think Florida had a penalty all game. So, like, Florida did what it needed to do in this spot. Is beating Long Island an accomplishment? No. And by the way, how many jokes would we have had if Jim McElvain were still the coach in Gainesville this week?
Oh, playing the Sharks? Oh,
yes.
Well, he would have had to have had carnal knowledge with a cheerleader, because she's a Sharks cheerleader. So, I mean, what? So,
did we ever find out who that guy was?
No, but man, oh man, there were a few. I'm certain somebody has created an Internet Hall of Fame. Jim McElwain impregnating Jaws, or whoever that was, has got to be in the conversation.
that was a moment.
Sam,
all right,
it was not me. It was not me, you jackwalder.
Imagine if it had been. Let's not go there, actually, now that I think
25 years ago? Could have been.
Could have been. All right, we've got a tie at 3, Tennessee, which had one of the better week 1 performances. Now, the Vols did give up. What was the final number? Okay, 377 yards of offense. That's not awful. Tennessee had control the whole time of the game, and sometimes game flow, that just happens. Tennessee had 5 sacks. Joey Aguilar looked good. I mean, certainly you don't – I think 3 might be a little aggressive for Tennessee, but certainly you didn't feel any worse about the Vols coming out of the game.
No, you feel way better. Way better. I mean, I had them right around in this ballpark. You feel way better. Joey Aguilar looked the part. Moreover, his teammates embraced him. I thought the offensive line, which had some question marks, looked a hell of a lot better. They may not have a guy who's going to churn up the numbers that Dylan Sampson did, but it's clear that Josh Heupel has a deeper running back room, even if it's not a top-heavy running back room compared to 2024. Tennessee well on their way. What they run for? 250, 260? They've led the league in rushing the last 2 years. Strength by diversity. Apologize to all my Trump lovers out there, but it is truly, they were in control from the start. This is a Syracuse team that showed up better than I thought. Thought the quarterback played better than I expected. Fran Brown's really good at what he does, and they were in complete control throughout. And because I had to get away from the TV for personal reasons on Saturday to attend a funeral, I listened to most of the game. And our Tennessee fans in the chat, Mike Keith is going to remind you of John Ward, and I mean that as the utmost confidence. I'm not saying anybody's going to replace John Ward or Kayward Lefford or Larry Munson or Jim Fife or Eli Gold or all these guys through the years. Al Serrato at Georgia Tech was one of my all-time favorites growing up in Atlanta. Toe meets leather and a high kick. No, I'm not saying that. But Mike Keith was tremendous on the radio call for the Tennessee Vols.
Yeah, I'm going to miss him as a Titans fan. I mean, he's been our guy since inception. I think even since we were with the Oilers.
And
No. I think we had a different radio guy with the Oilers. But like as soon as the Titans were the Titans in Tennessee, Mike Keith has been the guy, and like is just it's going to be weird listening to anybody else. I think Taylor Zarzar will do great, but it'll be weird turning on the radio and hearing somebody besides Mike Keith.
And Ramon Foster was great as his sidekick, the former Tennessee offensive lineman. It was true. Look, if you woke up this morning as a Tennessee fan and you get to add in Nico crapping his UCLA britches late Saturday night, your buttons are busting as you head to whatever Labor Day cookout you're going to.
Yeah, I am looking forward to hearing Ramon Foster. By the way, of course, Tennessee guy too. I know him a little bit. Really, really super dude. So happy for him that worked out with the Titans. But anyway, back to the SEC. Tied with 3 with Tennessee's Auburn, which apparently I can't spell. Let's fix that. There we go. What did I have? Auburn? That was not intentional. Anyway, Auburn, speaking of week 1 performances that were impressive, Auburn certainly had one. And again, in the same vein as Tennessee, you don't feel any worse about Auburn coming into the week. You give up more yards than you would have wanted to. But again, that was kind of a game flow thing with Auburn having the lead and Baylor needing to play from behind. So really, really good week for Hugh Freeze in Auburn.
Not afraid to say I had them higher than this. And I'll show up everybody who wants to say I'm a homer. I'm not, because I was hard on them in all the offseason. I said throughout, every time we talked about Auburn Baylor, this was the biggest game in the country for one coach. And they delivered. And they delivered in a couple of directions. One, it would have been real easy. This was Hugh Freeze's best play calling game of his career in Lee County, Alabama, because it had been real easy with that wide receiver room to try to get cute and get cuddly and say we're going to throw the ball more. Jackson Arnold threw the ball 17 times. They had 3 ball carriers who ran the ball each 16 times. You know why? Because Baylor couldn't stop them. So they just kept, here we come, here we come, here we come. Look, there are things to clean up, and Hugh Freeze is going to be in that great place that I think Shane Beamer's going to be in, that you get a big week 1 win against a power 4 opponent in a difficult environment, and now you can go into the film room still feeling confident and say, this is what we got to work on, because the tackling for Auburn was sloppy. So, look, and that's a DJ Durkin hallmark for most of his defenses. So, but no, there is no way. LSU had easily the biggest win of the weekend. Auburn had the second biggest win of the weekend.
Agreed with all that. I think the question for Auburn will be, can they throw the ball? Obviously, we know they've got a deep and gifted receiving room. Didn't need to because of how well they were running the ball, and really won't find out for 3 more weeks when they play Oklahoma, because the next 2 should be pretty easy wins. But going to keep an eye on that with Auburn. If Auburn can really get Jackson Arnold going in the passing game, then look out. That is probably going to have a shot at a playoff team. I want to see the defense get a little better over last week, but again, I can kind of explain that one away. All right, quietly coming in at number 2, Georgia, which took care of business against a rebuilding Marshall team. It was exactly what the odds makers said it was. Kirby Smart, as you pointed out rightfully, does not run up the score in these kind of games. And Georgia just kind of quietly went about business in a big win over Marshall.
I had them 2 spots lower because of the opponent, and they were at home. And look, I may overreact to 1 week, and that's fine, but this is the only evidence I have. So when I was sitting down and making my power rankings, I looked at taking a test, and Georgia played well. Georgia, I'm certain, kept cards close to their vest. It was a game they knew they were going to win. And even if you watch Brian Edwards and I on Bets and Ball Games on this platform, we talked about it extensively last week. Kirby's now either 0-13-1 or 0-14 in games that his team at Georgia are favored by 38 or more points. So, and the only one that a push is because the lines kind of have faded a little bit. But Georgia did exactly what we expected it to do. But the rest of these teams came in with way bigger question marks. And I don't know, maybe I shouldn't hold that against Georgia. But I had Georgia 4, Tennessee 3, and Auburn 2. And I can only assume that we all had the same one.
Yeah, we did. This was probably the easiest thing of the week, and not everybody had LSU at 1. I think Brian had Georgia at 1. But LSU went into Clemson, replacing both tackles against maybe the best defensive line in the country. Took care of business. Again, we said this with South Carolina. I think that you could have justified, another touchdown on the board that got taken away. To go into Clemson and win in that circumstance was terrific. Be interested to see. I'm thinking we'll get Ohio State at 1 in the AP poll this week, but I'm sure LSU is going to get some votes there, Jay.
If I had a vote, and at one time in my life I did, in the AP poll, I would have LSU 1, Ohio State 2. They won by the same margin against an elite foe, but one team did it on the road. So, and that matters to me. And we talked about it because Clemson's odds are still minus money to get to the playoff in terms of whether these big top 5 showdowns, top 10 showdowns were bingo card, center of the bingo card type of thing. Well, LSU just got a get out of jail free card. And now every LSU fan, all the heckling and jokes about the real Death Valley and Tigers on Tigers and whatever else, if you're LSU, you want Clemson to run the table, brother, because at the end of the year, if you're 10-2 and Clemson's 10-2, you got the trump card.
Yeah. Big win for them. A ton of tough games coming up. I think that's the kind of win that if you're looking for a tiebreaker at the end of the season, because I think LSU is going to take some losses. Everybody in the SEC is. That is one that you've got in your pocket. You've got the best win in the country after week 1. I guess possible apologies to Miami, but I don't really think so. Miami was playing Notre Dame at home. So I think LSU came away with the biggest win in week 1 than anybody got in college football, considering where the game was. All right, Jay, on the way out, let's pull up the current playoff odds for SEC teams in FanDuel. While you're doing that, reminder, FanDuel is the place you go for player props, same-game parlays. It's got an SGP menu that's deep and impressive. You can really build some fun combinations around player performances and game outcomes. It's got you covered with competitive odds and tons of betting options. Just remember, bet responsibly and have fun with it. Give us the latest playoff odds for SEC teams at FanDuel, please, Jay.
All right. It looks to be that the biggest favorite for SEC teams to make the playoff is Georgia at minus 265. LSU is next at minus 194. And again, those odds dictate that you have to bet $225 on Georgia to make the playoff to win $100. So they are clearly a favorite. Texas is at minus 184 after its loss. Gang, considering their schedule, and I don't want to hurt the feelings of the FanDuel folks who've been good to us, Tennessee is still at plus 310 at the playoff, which means
really
$100 win $310.
Okay.
South Carolina at plus 820 to make the college football playoff.
Plus
Ole Miss
820
has shorter odds at plus 220 than Tennessee or South Carolina after this week.
Yeah, that's definitely a schedule thing. Tennessee is going to be an underdog, I believe, against Georgia and probably against Alabama. That's on the road. A lot of time between now and then. And that is about it. Well, Florida. Florida's going to be another one. So the Vols, I think, will need to steal one of those three. Otherwise, the schedule is probably the weakest in the league. I think that to me feels like a sort of a schedule bet on all three teams.
Okay. I may need you to close out with some ad reads because I get on my FanDuel account and bet Tennessee to make the playoff. So because plus 310 is juicy for me.
Yeah. I mean, hey, the way they looked week one would be hard to blame you. So
the takeaway I have most about Tennessee is not anything they did on the field. Look, all the drama with Nico, those guys rallied around Joey Aguilar. Truly.
Yeah. Let's see. Just for fun, if we wanted to break ties here, because we had two of them. Let me find the way we all voted. If we deferred to the high vote, then Auburn would have been the 3 outright, and Alabama would have been the 11, pushing Missouri to 12. So if we want to break them that way, we had two ties. That's how we do it.
Well, the odds to make the playoff agree with that. Auburn's odds to make the playoffs are now down to plus 225. So hopefully you got that in the offseason if that's what you believe. And Missouri's plus 760. And if Tennessee doesn't have the weakest schedule in the country, in the SEC, Missouri might.
Yeah. Agree with you there. All right, Jay, we're done for the day. We've got a ton of predictions coming up today. We'll have reactions next weekend. We'll have all kinds of football content this week. Got basketball content coming up this week too. And we'll air an interview with a baseball head coach in the SEC that you might be really interested in seeing. So anyway, we'll tease you with that. Thank you guys for being here. If you're here and you liked it, leave us a thumbs up if you don't mind. Tell a friend. And when you go to our audio platforms, which we're on many of those, leave us a nice rating there too to help us get noticed. For Jay Greeson, I'm Chris Lee, your host here at Southeastern 16. God bless you. Have a great Labor Day. We'll see you again soon back at the channel.